hey, I have diabetes and my A1C is good. So therefore I have cracked the diabetes code and therefore I am qualified to show you because I have diabetes myself. So therefore it doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. They don't know you personally. Sure, they can learn your situation. You can tell them a little bit, but what about your other health needs? What about balancing multiple chronic illnesses or diseases or conditions? Because as you know, in the world of diabetes, especially in type 1, typically it's a buy one, get one free for autoimmune conditions, right? Maybe you have. Welcome to the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where we take all of the mysteries of blood sugar control, focusing on nutrition, exercise, and any of the other 40 plus factors that may impact your blood sugar. If you don't know me, my name is Ben Zeal. I'm a registered dietitian, certified diabetes educator, strength and conditioning coach, and I've lived myself with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years. And I am here to share everything that I have learned in both my personal and professional experience so you can live that incredible diabetes life. So get ready and let's dive right into today's episode. What is going on? Welcome to this episode of the Your Diabetes Insider podcast, where this week, I think I'm going to ruffle a few feathers. And my biggest ask is, as you listen to this episode, it's obviously nothing political, nothing religious. I don't deal with any of that kind of stuff. We're all about diabetes on this channel, but I just want you to promise me that regardless, we will still be able to be pals, regardless of what you think. And of course, I want to hear your feedback. And like I said, this is a big one because I'm going to boldly proclaim having diabetes is not enough to be counseling other people on how to manage their diabetes. And I'll be the first one to say, as a patient and as a provider, registered dietitian, I'm a certified diabetes educator, strength coach, also had type 1 diabetes for over 25 years. 95% of the time, patients understand diabetes better than their healthcare practitioners because they're the ones living with it every single solitary day in and day out. And a prime example of this is, you may or may not be familiar with my wife, Amelia, but Amelia, I've been married to now for almost 2 years, which is crazy. We've known each other for over 6. And when we first met, she had told me, hey, I have a pretty good understanding of diabetes. You know, I had to do a whole thing during pharmacy school. She's a pharmacist in critical care. And she actually had gone so far that in her unit of whatever she was learning about in pharmacy school, she actually wore a tandem insulin pump for 2 weeks. Now, granted, there wasn't any insulin in it because she doesn't have diabetes, but she had to wear the pump and utilize the pump as if she had diabetes, which I think is really cool. And I think that's something that most people without diabetes who are in the healthcare field probably should be doing just to get a better idea of the decision-making and what that all looks like. But that being said, Amelia had a pretty good handle on diabetes, right? From a schooling standpoint, from a, hey, I understand what goes on in the hospital standpoint. However, about 6 months into dating, she looked at me and said, I thought I knew diabetes pretty well. And I knew it more than most of my pharmacist, pals. But I did not know anything about diabetes relative to when I started dating you. And so what that means in a nutshell, right, is she had a really good foundation of diabetes relative to most people, probably 90+% of practitioners out there. But until she lived with someone and dated someone that had diabetes and had to go through things every single day and make all these decisions, she did not understand the full picture. And I always say it on social media. You see it all the time. I say, many people don't understand diabetes because they don't live with it. The other caveat is many people that are in, practitioners do not care to understand diabetes at a deeper level. I mean, think about it, right? You've been to doctor's offices where you see a doctor, you see an educator, you see someone who's been there for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. And I'm not saying every care person is like this, right? Not every person that's on a care team, not every practitioner is like this, but you've seen these people that they know what they learned back in the day, and they're just regurgitating the same information day in and day out. And that's not good either. That does not help us as people with diabetes. It just basically gives us outdated information that is not helpful, which is one of the main reasons why I do what I do and why my team does what we do in terms of educating people with the most evidence-based, cutting-edge information in the diabetes landscape for nutrition, for exercise, for great blood sugars, so you can eat the food you love, have amazing blood sugars, and have an amazing life without any restrictions from diabetes. That is why we exist, for that reason. And our goal is reaching over 1 million people and being able to help over 1 million people personally. So if you're looking for that kind of support, of course, message me. But here's the big thing. Just because you have diabetes and your healthcare team is not helpful does not qualify you to tell others how to manage theirs. Prime example here. Let's say, God forbid, you have an ankle injury. You have a really nasty sprained ankle. Maybe it's broken. I don't know. Just pick something. You have an ankle injury. You cannot put weight on it. Where are you going to figure out how to diagnose and heal this ankle? Are you going to go to an orthopedic specialist? Maybe you went to the emergency room first, and then you're going to go to an orthopedic specialist. Or are you going to go onto social media and say, hey, my favorite influencer also had an ankle injury similar to mine, and they were able to rehab it. So therefore, they can teach me how to fix my ankle. It sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud. Absolutely ridiculous. But effectively, it is the same thing. You're just substituting diabetes for the ankle. Oh, well, I healed my ankle, so therefore I can heal yours, but I have no background medically other. No, that doesn't make any sense. That does not make any sense. Are you going to trust somebody who has, a whole host of experience, they went to school, etc., and they are currently practicing as an orthopedist? Or are you going to trust somebody who said, hey, I was able to heal this, I figured it out, so now I can help you? Like, it sounds ridiculous. You want to have an ankle that you can use for the rest of your life, right? I totally am for sharing your own experiences and what you do and saying, hey, I have diabetes. This is what I personally do. For example, if I were not, and I speak as Ben right now, if I were not a dietitian and diabetes educator, if I were just, Ben, I have had diabetes for 25 years, and I don't know, I'm a software engineer. I'm not. I definitely am not. I know nothing about that, but you get the idea, right? If I'm like, hey, you know what? Software engineer, I really like looking at, my blood sugars, and here's a couple things I've noticed that really helped me. And I make the disclaimer, this is not medical advice. This is what I do. It may help you. It may not help you. Totally okay. Share your experience. Hey, this is what I figured out how to keep my CGM on better. Amazing. I want you to share that stuff. I think it's important that the diabetes online community does share that stuff. I think that's perfectly okay. However, what is not okay are the people that are saying, hey, I have diabetes and my A1C is good. So therefore I have cracked the diabetes code, and therefore I am qualified to show you because I have diabetes myself. So therefore it doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. They don't know you personally. Sure, they can learn your situation. You can tell them a little bit, but what about your other health needs? What about balancing multiple chronic illnesses or diseases or conditions? Because as you know, in the world of diabetes, especially in type 1, typically it's a buy one, get one free for autoimmune conditions, right? Maybe you have psoriasis. Maybe you have Hashimoto's. Maybe you have celiac. Maybe you have rheumatoid arthritis. Maybe you have something, a combination. You might have multiple other autoimmune. I think the record that I have heard ever was 7 in one human being, which is a lot. But now imagine that, you're listening to John Doe, internet influencer for diabetes, who knows diabetes because of their diabetes, but they do not know how to handle these other things. They do not understand medication interaction. They do not have formal education in nutrition. They do not, other than, maybe a weekend certification, which is cool. Like, don't get me wrong, it helps. Health coaches, you get a health coaching certification. That's cool. You can get that in a couple weeks or a couple months if it's a really robust one, but that doesn't substitute for years of education. And then more importantly, we have over 1,000 hours as dietitians of supervised practice just for the dietitian part. We had at least 1,200 hours. Then for the, CDCES, for the certified diabetes educator side, there were another 1,000 hours plus that had to be supervised. That is over 2,000 hours of supervised practice, not just the education side. Because someone could say, oh, well, the education could be outdated, blah, blah, blah. Yes, there's continuing education requirements for a reason. But that's over 2,000 hours of supervised educational practice just to be able to do what we do now. General health coaching is totally fine. I'm all about that for the general population. There's a lot of need for people that need accountability. There's health coaching, etc. But the moment that it crosses over into a chronic disease, it is no bueno anymore. That is the nicest way I can say it. Like, if you're like, hey, I got my health coaching certification, I'm a personal trainer, I'm really excited to help out people to, help them lose weight, etc. And all you're dealing with is general population, no chronic diseases, no chronic illnesses. By all means, have at it, more power to you. Thank you for what you do to help make our community healthier. But on the flip side, if it's, oh, I'm going to help you how to deal with your blood sugars, and you can't do that. It's just not okay. It's unregulated. It's not licensed. There's no accreditation board. There's no board exam. Like, there's a reason why dietitians need to have a master's, that 1,200 hour plus internship, a board exam for the CDCES, another 1,000 plus hours, another board exam. And maybe you're, on an alternative pathway for the CDCES. There's ways you can do it as a physical therapist or, something else in the health field where I believe it's 1,500 or 2,000 hours. So it's more hours, same board exam, etc. But the moral of the story is there is still a massive requirement and undertaking. And that is why so many people don't want to do it. Like I always advise people, I'm like, hey, if you want to do something in the diabetes field, go about it the air quote right way. Like you can go to do an accelerated nursing program. It takes like 18 months. Some of them are shorter. There's one here in Tampa at USF that's I think 16 months. Go do that at 16 months, then go do the, work in diabetes for a couple of years. And now you're a CDCES. That's pretty quick, but nobody wants to do that time. No one wants to put in that work. They just want to be able to say, oh, well, I can handle your diabetes. No, you really can't. Yes, you may know a lot more than most care teams because you've lived with it, but you can't just preach from what you've done for yourself. Prime example, there were years where I ate very low carb. That is what I thought worked best for me. I wanted to see what it did biochemically. I was in, grad school and I thought it would be great. Turns out for me, it wasn't exactly what was perfect for me. But imagine I was trying to do this as a provider and saying, hey, you need to eat very low carb. You need to eat 50 grams of carbs or less per day because that's what works well for me. That doesn't put the patient's best interests. It doesn't work with that in mind, right? It has to be about what's best for the patient. I have patients that are vegan. I don't care that they're vegan. If that's a life choice they want to make, we work around what they are doing to make sure that they can fit in their beliefs of being vegan while still managing their blood sugars. I also have somebody on the other side of the spectrum who's carnivore. That's their choice. They want to be carnivore. It's not what I would necessarily pick, but if the blood sugars are supporting it, it's something that they can stick to and it fits into their life. I have to now balance that with their other situations I'm looking for, right? If there's weight loss involved, if there's labs involved, is their cholesterol on point? How's their blood pressure? I have to balance all of these different pieces in addition to their blood sugar. Because of course, blood sugar is only one part of the equation. And so I can't just push what worked well for me. Oh, my A1C is 5.2. Therefore, your A1C can be 5.2 also. It doesn't work like that. You have to do what's best for the patient in their life. And if you want to do it the quote right way, do the education, but nobody wants to. It's like what Ronnie Coleman said, right? Like everybody want to be a bodybuilder, but nobody want to lift no heavy ass weight. It's the same thing here. Everybody wants to do diabetes work and work directly, but they don't want to do the actual education that's behind it. And there's a reason for that. And that's for your safety. There's already so much misinformation online. I post, reaction videos about it periodically. I got other friends that post reaction videos to it. Evidence Nutrition's a great example. Shout out to Ed. But you look at that and people love the reaction videos where I'm basically, for lack of a better term, calling out the BS. And that is because these are people that are not educated, but these are the same people that are turning around saying, well, my blood sugars are good, so yours can be too. Like, where do they get their info from? Even if they get them from quote quality sources and they know a lot, they can be very educated. And I totally know that there are people that are not practitioners that have diabetes, are exceptionally educated. Prime example, Diabetic Justin, who does all the tech stuff that's out in diabetes world, one of the most intelligent human beings I've ever talked to when it comes to diabetes. He knows a ton. But he's not out there parading saying, hey, I can help you get your blood sugars better. He's out there talking about the newest tech that's coming out. He's staying in his lane. He knows what he is doing. You can ultimately seek out providers that work for your needs. Because yes, I'm going to get people saying, well, my provider sucks. They don't know anything. They've been saying the same thing for years, where I go into my appointment and I have my 10 minutes of glory. They tell me nothing and then I leave. Right. There are a lot of providers that do suck. I am not out here telling you every single provider is good because they went to school and they did what they had to do. A lot of them are not good. A lot of them are not good. A lot of dietitians are not good. In fact, I would argue almost to say that the majority of diabetes dietitians are not good because they're not going beyond the plate model and the most stereotypical recommendations of all time of eating 45 to 60 grams of carbs at meals and 15 to 30 at snacks. There are a lot of practitioners that are not good. So I'm out here saying you need to find practitioners that are going to be working in your favor, that know their ish. Because again, another prime example. There was somebody, I won't name names, there was a person who described, they do not have a medical background, but they were telling someone how to handle a high-fat meal completely wrong. You've heard me talk about, the now and later dosing technique, where you've got some insulin now, you have needs later, because your body will end up needing more insulin because of the fat, because of how it slows down digestion, etc. There's research that supports this. There was a person who was asked about how to handle a high-fat meal, high-carb meal, and they told somebody to use their basil. And not only is that information just absolutely wrong, yes, the basal increased technically more insulin, so you're on the right track, but that information could kill someone. And I don't know how to be nicer about this. There's really no other way to be than to just straight up call it what it is. But that information could kill someone. This is someone who is unqualified, not a medical professional, who is out there saying, this is what to do with your insulin. You are so out of scope. It is not okay. And on top of that, What I'm really nervous about with this situation, yes, obviously there's a lot of people out there that are parading around, oh, I have diabetes, I can help you, right? But that the information that they give is going to really seriously hurt somebody because they don't understand how to balance all the different pieces of the equation because they are not educated for that. They know it works for their bodies, which is great. But it's, again, the equivalent of saying, well, this person played football in the NFL, therefore they know how to work out, therefore they can teach me. It doesn't work like that. They have to know your body and your situation, your limitations. And if you're listening to this and you're like, hey, you know what? I have someone who's not regulated and it works for me, more power to you. But I'm just saying, from a risk standpoint, it is not a great situation because they cannot balance all the different pieces of chronic disease. And again, I am not here saying every single provider is amazing, but if your provider is not serving you, do your best to find one that is. Your insurance network may be able to help. Start searching some of the doctor reviews in your area for endocrinologists. I know the wait times are sometimes annoying, but getting on multiple lists can help. Plus cancellation lists can help. Ideally, there's a way to interact and get a vibe to make sure the match is good for you. I know with our practice, I'm typically interacting with people prior to them becoming patients. So I have an idea of what their situation is to make sure that we can actually help them and serve them. Because remember, we're all dietitians. We all also live with diabetes. So we get it on the personal and the professional side. But I'm here to tell you, look, if your team's giving outdated information, there are new up and coming providers that have fresh ideas, that have fresh perspectives. There are people out there that have diabetes themselves. I know that there are endos that have diabetes themselves. I know there's nurse practitioners and PA have diabetes themselves that have a different perspective. And so what I would suggest in this particular case is obviously okay, let me back up. If you love your provider right now, you love your care team, roll with them. They're amazing. You are blessed. You are probably in the minority. If I don't really know, I don't love my endo, but they get the job done. I get my prescriptions, I get what I need. And I have, a dietitian or I have an educator that can help me. More power to you. Do your thing. You're also in the minority. If you're like, I don't really love my endo, I don't really get good education, online seeking better information for me or my loved one or my kid or whoever it is, shop around for endos a little bit or shop around for educators. Because at the end of the day, if your endo can get you the prescriptions that you need, the educators can do pretty much the rest of the job. That's why they're diabetes educators. But don't be afraid to look around a little bit and say, okay, my endo's not doing it. Who else can do this for me? Who else can help? And maybe there's another, practitioner that happens to live with it. That would also be helpful. And go online. And when you're online, keep your mind open to the idea that there are some good ideas that I can bring to my care team from this. If someone's like, hey, I have diabetes, and this is what I do to lower my high blood sugars, and they don't have a medical qualification, that's okay. It might be a really interesting idea to bring to your care team. Because I'm not going to say, oh, the people who have diabetes out there who are, preaching certain things. I'm not saying that things don't work. There's a lot of things that are viable because as patients, again, we do know our bodies better than most people. However, it's the application to others where you have to be careful. So if you find a good idea online, you're like, that's interesting. Bring it to your care team. Patients bring stuff to me all the time. Hey, I heard about this, or hey, this person posted this, or hey, this happened. Bring it to your care team and let them help you sift through it. If your care team's like, I've never heard of that before, dig a little bit into it yourself, bring a little bit of background with you. So maybe you can help them understand it better. Maybe it's something that they can then apply to other patients and help change lives of others, right? There's always a positive to it. And that's why people online, in the diabetes space go into this. They want to help improve the lives of others. The problem comes into play when they are trying to work outside of their scope. So my big thing for you is if you're not thrilled with your team, look around, utilize the internet resources, the social media resources to come up with other potential ideas. And if the people online are like, wow, this person's awesome, check what their qualifications are. Did they get any formal education? Did they get any schooling? Are they actual practitioners or are they people that just happen to have diabetes and control their own blood sugars very well? Because that will also partially determine their credibility, right? They can manage their own, that's amazing. But do they have the qualifications to then help other people? Or did they try to just take the shortcut route and say, hey, I don't feel like doing all the schooling, but I say I can do this. Therefore, I can help people. And that's a situation where I'm praying that it never happens, but I'm nervous that something's going to happen to somebody at some point that's not regulated because someone was acting outside of their scope. Again, prime example. If you think about it like this, let's be my point that I leave you with. If you are sick and you're concerned about DKA, are you calling your doctor or your care team, or are you calling your favorite influencer to ask what to do? That is my parting message for you on this. Let this be some food for thought. Let it marinate a little bit. And with that, I will see you in the next episode.
Hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.